Hey folks, my name is Rene Enriquez and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Bootser. Black Hand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Hey folks, my name is Rene Enriquez and you're watching Uncensored. So it's been a while since we have last done the making of the Black Hand, and I just converted a little bit more video here. So I have another segment in this series, and I want to run this video and break it down as we go along. I hope you're enjoying this series. A little heads up for anybody who wants to support the channel, just encouraging everybody to watch the videos in their entirety. It's important. You can also hype, leave a comment, and a thumbs up. It's a way to support the channel without having to give money, because it helps us generate, and it feeds the algorithm for us. And anything that promotes us in the algorithm is good for the channel. So if you can't afford to become a member, because we have memberships available, if you can't afford to buy merch, if you can't afford to buy a personalized autographed book from the website or www.realreneenriquez.com, then you can support us this way. And we appreciate all the support, just watching the videos. We truly appreciate it, because it's you guys that have built this channel. And I want to thank each of you for what this is becoming, because we're doing it organically. I mean, I could go out and pay for 100,000 subscriptions and get my plaque, like a lot of other people have, but I don't want to do that. I want to do this, like, I want it to be real. And we started from the ground up. This is our second shot at it, because we got hacked the first time. If anybody remembers the mob spot, that's what happened to the channel. We got hacked, we lost it, and I started it from the ground up, and really didn't know what I was doing, and still don't know what I'm doing, but I have you guys here supporting me, and I truly appreciate it. With that said, I'm going to start the video. Let's unpack this as we go along. This is Chris Blatchford. For anybody who's just jumping in, let me bring you up to speed and give you a thumbnail, right? So Chris Blatchford is interviewing me with Sergeant Richard Valdemar of the Los Angeles Metropolitan Task Force on Violent Crime. That's the first Mexican Mafia task force that brought a RICO. There was one before that in Monterey Park that did some state indictments, right? And that was like back in the 70s and 80s. This is in the 90s. This is in 2002. I was flown down from Pelican Bay State Prison. I'm debriefing for the FBI, but this is not a debrief. This is where the Black Hand originated. This is where I contacted Chris Blatchford. We signed a collaboration agreement, and we agreed to write a book, which became the Black Hand. And this is the interview process where we extracted all this content and transcribed it, and then made a book out of it, right? Coupled with hundreds of phone calls and tape recordings and a whole bunch of other stuff. And we're going to bring it all to you in the making of the Black Hand. So here we go. Without further ado, let's kick off this video.
Now I could take this and put it on the air, and people wouldn't notice much of the difference.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Does it seem like a standard interview and all that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially the light's pretty good in here. Well, I mean, when then did you know you were a made guy then? At what point?
Well, we went to the process of voting at some time shortly thereafter. It was I think it was May, April. That was the beginning of the year.
You're at the same prison.
We're at the same prison. I'm in Folsom Shoe 2, and I'm babysitting some wine. Babysitting this wine is when you make it in your cell, you have to take care of it, so you call it babysitting. Mm-hmm. I'm making it for Senón Grajeda and Sloppy Corn Elmore and members of Chewy from VNE Martinez. Mm-hmm. They're made already, and I'm the one up. So I'm sitting in the cell. I'm waiting for them
Did
to
you
come.
know this? Do you know it's?
I know the process is going through.
Yeah.
I know I'm up, and I know the vote's taking place. But it takes months sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll delay it, and this is at a point in time where they allowed us to have handheld mirrors. Mm-hmm. So the yard recall comes in, and those guys coming from the yard. Senón Grajeda calls me, and he tells me, he says, "Hey, Rene, stick your mirror out." And I stick my mirror out of my cell bars, and he says, "You see this?" And I'm looking at him, and he's sticking his hand out of the door. He says, "You see this?" And I say, "Yeah." He says, "That's you now." And I just felt at that point like an Olympic gold medalist, like I had just won a gold medal. I had arrived. I mean, I had reached the pinnacle of my life. this is a point where I had reached, where I was rewarded for all my hard work. I was now a mafioso.
I was a mafioso. I remember that distinctly because Sloppy loved wine, right? And he didn't want it to get caught. I could have left it in the cell and went out to the yard, but the chances are that somebody would have walked in the cell and did a walkthrough search and smelled it. And you know, and back in those days, if you were babysitting wine, cops knew you were babysitting it, and if you didn't leave it unattended, they wouldn't mess with it. But if you left the cell, they would take it, and they typically wouldn't write you a 115. You had to do something pretty serious to get a 115 back in those days. But I was in the cell doing that. I made this wine, and I was babysitting it, and Chilito, that's the brother of Cuate and Huayno, Grajeda from La Rana. Chilito calls me and he does that. He goes like that. You see that? That's you now. He points to his hand. He goes, that's you now. And I knew immediately I was made. I had been told already by Shy and Sloppy. Actually, Sloppy had very little to say to me during the whole process when they were making me, because Sloppy Corwin Elmore was my padrino, but he had very little to say. He says, I'm going to be your padrino. I said, okay, cool. And the rest fell on Shy and Black Dan. They were walking me around the yard, schooling me. They told me the boat was coming in. I didn't know when to anticipate it or you know, when it was coming. Sometimes it took months and months and months because the message couldn't be delivered to somebody. You had to wait until somebody saw them and visit, or they sent them a letter. And this is the days of snail mail, right? So they told me that day, and I swear I felt like I had arrived, like that I had reached this pinnacle in my life. And we busted down the wine that night. I remember we busted down the wine that night. We got drunk, and I remember all the camaradas were sending me kites, like congratulations, and don't forget the small guys down here on the bottom. Don't forget where you came from, and just all my friends that I used to kick it with on the yard, they were just camaradas, right? Like real camaradas, not these guys that they're, you know, Edgar generation, N-word dropping, 20-year-olds calling themselves camaradas. These are guys that had put in work, that had been around the organization for a long time, like true camaradas, right? They congratulated me, and it was an awesome feeling. I remember that. It was an awesome feeling.
I didn't know what that was at the time. I didn't know that there wasn't much of an organization at that point. I thought it was all pie in the sky organization. We're gonna all go wear silk suits and everything. It just wasn't that way. But at the time, I felt that I had arrived. I mean, this is like, oh wow.
And you're 22.
I'm 22 years old. I'm a made Mexican Mafia member.
So there's no big ceremony or anything.
No, there's none of that secret
just
burning the saint in the hand or anything.
Yeah.
What they do is that when you go out, there's a ceremony of sorts where all the members, they hug you. They shake your hand, they welcome you to the organization, and your padrino and a couple other brothers will take you to the side and tell you the rules. They'll tell you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And then it's just familiarizing yourself with the
Yeah, there really was no ceremony. I don't recall ever there being a ceremony. They shake your hand and they hug you. Some of them kiss you on the cheek. Black Dan kissed me on the cheek. But that was his typical greeting. Black Dan would kiss people on the cheek. If he loved you, knew you, and you were his brother, then he would do that. I didn't see him do it to all cardenales, just the guys that he was really close to, and I was pretty close to Deck Black Dan. So him and Chai pulled me to the side. Stump was right there too, Ajo Valencia and Sloppy. And they pulled me to the side. They told me the reglas. You can't be a rat. You can't be a coward. You can't be a homosexual. You can't raise your hand to a carnal without organizational sanction. You can't have sex with a wife or girlfriend of a member. You can't encroach on the territory of another member. Membership is for life. The eme comes first, even if it means killing your own carnal. And you can't encroach on another member's territory. So those are the rules I remember. And here's the thing, right? Every carnal has their different interpretation on the rules. They're based around those first couple of rules. Can't be a rat, coward, homosexual. You can't be a rat, coward, homosexual, and you can't raise your hand to a carnal without organizational sanction, right? Those are the hard rules, right? The other ones are kind of gray, right? They're kind of gray rules, right? And imposition of sanction is really dependent on your socio-political status in the organization. So if you're a new guy and you break a rule, you might get whacked, right? But if you're an old guy and you got some bodies under your belt, then you might be okay to breaking the rules, because all those rules have been broken, all of them, and multiple members have broken them. It's really just their juice that gets them by, right? So I remember that ceremony, and I remember Angel Valencia told me, like, he was real serious, like dead serious. He was a really grouchy, serious guy, right? He got grouchier and more serious and more miserable as he got older. But I remember at this point, I mean, he was okay with me. I never really felt close to him. I always felt like I was arm's distance from the guy. But he was okay with me, and he says, "Hey, man, we got this serious thing that now that you're a carnal, you got to do." And I was all ears. I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" He says, "At your recall." Because we're on the shoe yard, and there's about 30 of us on the shoe yard, right? And on the shoe yard, at yard recall, you go up to the gate, one at a time, your cell. They go in cells, like 5th tier C side, 5th tier D side, then they go down 4th tier, 3rd tier, and you go in that order, right? And as they call you, you step into this yellow squared off painted box, right? Right at the gate. And they have this port cut into the gate where you strip out, give them your clothes, squat, cough, all that. Open your mouth, pull back your foreskin. If you're uncircumcised, lift up your testicles. That's how it's done, right? That's really how it's done. You show them the bottom of your feet, wiggle your toes, and you squat and do that cough thing. And I always felt that was degrading, That was real degrading. That men or women, they're there too doing it to you, and it's kind of degrading. And particularly if it's a cold day. Yeah, it really was. It was like like you felt like an animal doing it, right? So as soon as you get naked, you strip search, you do your little routine, and then you put your clothes back on, and then you stick your hands backwards to the little port that's cut into the gate, and you get hooked up and you leave. So Angel tells me, he says, "Hey man, when you go over there into that yellow line," he says, "you got to dance a little jig." And he started dancing, right? He started moving a little bit, dancing a little bit. And we all just looked at him and just all started cracking up because it wasn't what I expected. I thought he was going to tell me, take off on somebody or do something, And I was down. Like, okay, I'm a new carnal. I'm going to do this, But it came out to be this little joke that he pulled. And I know it sounds kind of tame right here, but you had to be there at the moment because the tension was so thick, right? That he just busted it with that, and it was hilarious. I always remember that about him.
The mechanics of functioning in the organization. I mean, it was much like a learning process because they tell you just a tip because you're not supposed to be told anything as an outsider because it's a secret organization. It's the worst kept secret in organized crime that there is. Being a mafioso, everybody immediately knows you're a mafioso. Everybody immediately knows the rules. Everybody immediately knows there's a vote going down. It's the worst kept secret in the underworld. But it's supposed to be secret. When you're initiating, say I'm initiating you. I tell you, I got my eye on you, Chris. I want to make you. Are you cool with that? You say, yeah, I'm cool with that. So I'll tell you a little bit. You know what? It's a hard life. You have to be sure that you want this. You're going to go through some things, and they're going to be scary. And it's a hard life. You have to be sure that you really want to dedicate the rest of your life to this because you'll never get out of it once you're in.
And did someone have that talk with you?
Yeah, Shai did. Like down. They had these talks with me before I get in, but they don't tell you what you're getting involved in, other than the fact that you're going to be a carnal, and you don't even know the rules at that point. You don't even know what the constraints and the confinement of membership means. So you're going into it really blindly, and then once you're into it, you understand and say, wow, this is not even an organization yet. This is just a bunch of guys, most of whom are dope fiends. I was a dope fiend myself, all trying to fit into the role of mafioso. I mean, it's in its nascency at that point. It's in its birth. It's going through its evolution. And it has the foundation of being an organization. We have the notoriety, we have the terroristic aspect of it, we've killed people. But the true sense of organization is not there yet. It doesn't come till like 10 years later when we start organizing it. I mean, it's our generation that made it what it is today.
You'll hear different versions because there's other people that do content that, and I'm not detracting from the developments in the 70s and 80s, right? Like the halfway house and Mundo says spreading the gospel. But the true sense of the organization really didn't kick in. It was still just a prison gang at that point in time. When I got in, it was a prison gang. That's what it was. It wasn't a syndicate, an organized crime syndicate. It wasn't a traditional organized crime group, not in the sense that it is today. That didn't exist, right? It was a secret criminal society. It was prison based. It was not society centric. It was all about prison, and relatively few people on the streets knew what the Mexican Mafia was. They heard about it in these hushed undertones and whispers, because nobody spoke overtly about the organization back in those days. You'd hear M-Men like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that." Yeah, I heard you're supposed to stay away from those guys. That's what I heard when I was a kid, right? Stay away from those guys. And lo and behold, I become one.
As
Not
opposed
Joe.
to the old guys, yeah.
Yeah, not Joe and those guys. They didn't make the mob. We made the mob. We're the guys that organized the drive-bys. We're the guys that put crews together. We're the ones that did the outrageous hits in front of cops and everybody. We're the guys that put fear and the word M-Man back into people's mouths because it was fading really quick. Back in the 70s, they had the halfway houses and all that stuff. And that's what I got into. The afterglow of that heyday, which was fading quickly. I mean, they had the Sunrise House and they had these other things they had going on, the Ellen Deadly murders and those last round of indictments.
75 or so.
75 or so, and I got in 85, 10 years later, something like that, 84.
And it was on the wane then.
It was on the wane. Nobody was doing anything. Nobody was out there doing anything. As a matter of fact, we were the first ever murders in about 10 years when we got out there. Me and Jack Padilla, Maurice killed Perdón Gallegos and this other girl, Cynthia Galvedon, and some of the other things that we did. Nobody was doing anything. The members were complacent and pacified by receiving these little tidbits of heroin to placate them, to satisfy their habits. But
Let me stop this right here, man, because I sound like I'm pontificating, and I really am. I'm an arrogant MFer right there, right? But I was no better than those guys. I was still doping. I had been sober for a while right here, right? I had not went to the SMY yard and relapsed, right? But I was no better than any of those guys I'm speaking about. I was not far removed from the cesspool. I'm just fresh out of the mob. I still have that arrogant mentality, and you see it. And I caught that right now. Even how I'm projecting, like we're the ones that created the mob. We're the ones that. It really was my generation that forged the organization into what it is today. Nobody can deny that fact. Nobody can minimize that. The organization is what it is because of a bunch of progressive thinkers, and not just me alone, right? There was Pee Wee Aguirre, there was Raymond Weathershai Shryack, Black Dambrella, there was Donito from Sereno, there was all the guys that a Cowboy Therian, there was Champ Mendez. All these guys played a role in this, but there was a group of us that really pushed it, right? Chuco Castro even played a role, even though he was an FBI informant, right? He was playing a role in forging this organization into what it is today. Now, the incremental progress that it's made to the point where it is today, having casitas, spreading out to other states, still maintaining control of tens of thousands of street gang members, that's all progress. It's going to continue to grow. But it's all based on what we did. Because if we wouldn't have done what we'd done, the organization would still be a prison gang. When I got out, I remember in 1988, my first parole in Tehachapi, California, I was in 4B, the SHU, the Southern Maximum Security Complex. I got out there, and I went to go deal with somebody, and I told them I'm from the MA. They said, "What is that? Isn't that a prison thing?" And nobody had respect for it. Some people knew, some homeboys knew, and I went and scored from a couple places, and I tried to buy, heroin and cocaine to sell, and they knew who I was, and they knew what I was, but they didn't really know much about the organization because it was like this dormancy period. When they did the indictments, the state indictments, and they got Alfie and Shy, the ones that Mundo flipped in, that kind of killed the organization. A Cardinal will get out here and there, but they really wouldn't do anything. They'd come right back to prison, right? It wasn't until a group of members got out there and we pitched the idea of stopping the drive-bys that the organization really took a foothold in the community. So that's what I'm trying to say, without the arrogance, right? Because this is all arrogance right here. I see it, man, and and you know what? I'm gloating right here. I could see it. Like I'm still special. I am still that guy, because people still want to know about this. So I still hold some level of authority, right? I could see it in my body language and all that stuff, and it's kind of distasteful.
We went out there, we started kicking in doors, terrorizing people, extorting people.
And whose idea was that?
Mine, Black Dan's, Jack's, Mo's.
That Black Dan was still locked up? Or
We had seen Black Dan Black Dan had paroled, but all that time he was with me in Folsom. And I told him I was going back to White Fence, and I told him we were going to organize, we were going to put down, the fear of the inmate back into the streets. And a few people, they were okay with this, the taxation, because at one point in time when I got in, it was forbidden to make money off of the organization. You could not tax, you could not do anything like that. It was like...
Let's stop it right there. I met Little Mo from White Fence in Folsom State Prison. We're in the general population. And all this time I was with Black Dan Barella in Shoe 2. I was with him in Shoe 2, and I told him, I said, we're going to go out there and we're going to do this, we're going to organize this. And he was cool with it, right? And speaking of White Fence, there's always been a story out there that they were going to eliminate me, that they were willing to face the green light list because I was kicking in the doors. And a couple of viewers have made comments on it, right? They said, hey, Rene, is it true? Did you hear the story on this channel? And I heard that story, right? But I got this to say about that, right? And I don't mean this out of any sense of arrogance or hubris or anything like that, right? But if they were so serious about doing it, why didn't they do it, right? It reminds me of the guy that gets in an argument and somebody pulls him back and he yells out, "You're lucky they held me back, or I would have gotten you, or I would have beat you up," right? That's what it reminds me of. The easy part is just saying it, right? It's saying it. Well, they got the easy part done. I was there, and I was doing what I was doing, and I was repping. And I wasn't backing down from any of them. I went to their houses. They knew what I was a topper from Armando Aleman, topper from White Fence. I ran that house. That was my trap house. We called it a dope house back then, right? We didn't call them trap houses. That's another, I think, another contemporary phrase that has emerged in the recent past. But that was my spot, right? My mom lived down the street. Mo's mom lived on the corner. And it was on Camulos and Girado. That's the street that my house was on in White Fence. Camulos and Girado, right there in the corner, right? And they knew where to see me every day. I didn't hide. I didn't run. None of those things. So if they really were set on doing that, and they said that I got lucky because I got busted, right? No, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. If they were really that serious about doing something, you don't talk about it. And you don't tell stories about it later on, like, yeah, we were going to get that guy, but he got busted, so we couldn't. And if that was the case, why didn't they do it when I was in prison, right? If they were willing to face it out there in the streets, I was among plenty of them in the prison system that they could have done it, right? And none of them did. None of them did. I'm still here today. And I don't say that out of arrogance. And let's just say it's true, right? That some gunslinger out there wanted to, eliminate me. Well, I'm really thankful it didn't happen. So, let's just say that there's the possibility that and being objective about it. Well, I really am. I'm humbled by the fact that it didn't happen and that I'm still here. But like, a story's easy to tell, and a story's just a story. A cellie of a cellie told this guy, or this guy told me when he was my cellie, and that's a story. That's, the dude's just running this cock holster. That's how I see it, and I don't know how you guys see it, but that's how I see it. Because I didn't talk about it, I was about it. And when I was in White Fence, I was about it. And if that's the way they felt, they could have took action, and they didn't. And that's not a challenge at all. Because maybe there was that one guy that was like gung-ho that wanted to face the wrath of eliminating a carnal. I'm just glad it didn't happen, right? But my true gut feeling is that somebody's just running their cock holster, right? And if you can't figure out what a cock holster is, if you give it a little thought, you'll figure it out.
Sacrilegious. You can't sell hits, you can't do favors, you can't do anything like that. It was like almost everything was sacrilegious. Joe Morgan and those brothers that were in at that time had a specific idea that they were drug dealers. And that's how they did their business. And sure, they did some things under the table, but only they did it. They were the upper echelon at that point. And for the lower rung individuals like me who just got in, or just making our bones on the way up, we're left without any hustle. So we forged this living, this organization out of the raw stock that they left behind.
So the day it was Grajeda who reached out the hand out in the cell, and you knew you were a member.
Yeah.
Let me stop that right there. That's the way it really was. Like us, we couldn't really make money because they told us you can't make money on the MA. And I scratched my head like, what the hell? I'm a cardan and I'm from the mafia and I can't make money? What the hell? That just didn't sound right. It didn't sound right, you know? To use the MF for your own benefit was a rule, right? And we did the tapes for the hotel meetings, and Shy and Perico talk about it in that. And they got this concept like, no, you're not doing it for a carnal, you're doing it for the MF. That's the principle for your loyalty, right? But if you're working for me, you're working for me. That whole concept they had with not taxing the gangs and all that stuff was antiquated ideology, right? It just didn't apply anymore. And I give Shy a lot of credit. He adapted, into what he became, but he didn't like the idea of taxing gangs. And I just did not agree with that. I did not agree with their concept of, no, we can't tax gangs, we can't tax drug dealers. It's not for you, it's for the organization. No, I form a crew, I form people who are going to pay me money. You're not touching it, it's mine. I'll take care of carnales, but some of those concepts were antiquated. And what I'm saying here is that we forged it. We really did. We really did. I was allowed, my crew was allowed to flourish while I was in prison. Because I never had a crew before that. It was just me, Jocko, Mo, and a couple other guys. I mean, that was the wrecking crew out there in the streets, and we were just out there putting the blues down. Like we'd pull around the corner, and people would run as soon as they saw my car. It was a black car. I forgot what make it was. We extorted it from some guy, and I had a Cadillac before that, a Cadillac Seville, and we extorted that from some guy, and we pull around the corner, people will run. So we were like putting the terror of the organization back into the mouths of people, right? Like we wanted our presence to be felt. We wanted to reverberate throughout the community, so we could build off of that. Well, these other cardantes were content with like getting their little ounce of dope here and there from the connection that they had established over in Tijuana or in the hood or whatever. Like Joe had a connection with Harry Buckley and his family, right? And Cuate had a connection with Margaret and John. I won't say their name. It's just MJ. We call him MJ, right? And they were happy with that. They were happy with their little drug connection, and nobody could mess with them because that's how they survived, right? I wasn't happy with that, and the guys that I knew, they weren't happy with that. We weren't happy sitting on the sidelines, so we created our own thing, and this is what I'm talking about here.
You got out of prison.
88.
How long after that happened?
Oh, probably about 4 years.
So what were those 4 years like after you became a May guy?
Politics. I got immediately started getting politicked on by a faction called the Bebito Kilroy crew. It was in Folsom.
You should mention that Folsom, until Pelican Bay was established, was the
Was the
hardest
place.
prison we had.
That was, it was like the hardest. That was like, in Pelican Bay is not even as hard as that because people used to get killed in Folsom. Mm-hmm. You're walking around with guys and you're going to the yard with guys where they could stab you. Mm-hmm. Now you can't get stabbed. You can only get killed by your cellie in Pelican Bay. So Folsom was a pretty rough place. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the name itself, it's notorious for being a hard-nosed place.
Yeah.
End of the line, as they used to call it. Mm-hmm. So I was there, and that's where I made my bones, and they released us soon thereafter. All Mexican Mafia members went to the main line. And I started really experiencing politics. I was hearing about them when I first initiated, but I started experiencing them, the dissension in the organization, the personality conflicts.
And what, on the main yard, what would you guys all be in a little group out there?
Yeah, we'd hang out with each other. We'd hang out with the camaradas, the soldiers, and we'd hang out with the members. We'd have meetings out there. But there was no structured organization to it. Yet still, we formed a commission at that point in time. Each block had 2 commissioners. But it was abusive. I mean, this is a cronyism.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember the commissioners in our block were Vito Kilroy, and that was 5 block. And 3 block was Nico and Gil Santisteban, I believe, Silver Tongue Gil. He was from up north. Both are deceased though. And in 3 block, in 2 block, it was Negro and Gabriel Huerta. I believe it was Gabriel Huerta. Could be mistaken on that. I'm pretty sure it was. But here's the thing: as soon as Negro became the commissioner, Güero Caballo went and begged him, "Let me be the commissioner. Let me be the commissioner." Like literally begged him, right, to be the commissioner. So Negro wasn't tripping on the status, right? He wasn't. He just wanted to do the right thing. But Caballo was, and Caballo's always been that way. Güero Caballo, Jorge Gonzalez, and we're gonna do a profile on Jorge soon, and I think some of you guys could be surprised about what I put out there. All due respect to Jorge, I have nothing but respect for the people who still want to live that life. Like I said, if that's your golden rainbow, knock yourself out, bro. If that's where you're gonna find your little pot of gold, and at the end of the rainbow, a little leprechaun with a little pot of gold, then God bless you, bro. God bless you. But Güero Caballo did literally beg Negro to be the commissioner of 3 block. So we only had 3 blocks in the general population because 4 block was actually 4A and 1 block was actually shoot 2. So we had 3 general population yards: 5 block, 3 block, and 2 block. And so we had 6 commissioners on the yard. But immediately we saw Bebito and Kilroy go into politic mode, right? They started politicking on Shai. They started politicking on Nico. They started politicking on me. And the other Cardenadas, we were like, whoa. Oh, because there was a bunch of new guys. Maybe about 10 guys that got in at that time. And we were like taken aback with about 25, 30 Cardenadas on the yard. A third of us are new. We didn't know what to do. And when it started happening, I remember talking to Mike Boo on the yard, and I said, "Man, what's going on, man?" He says, "Hey, just sit back. Don't get involved. You'll be fine." I remember he had a calming effect on me. Mike Moreno is such a easygoing dude. I always liked the guy. Like, he had a level head on his shoulders. He wasn't a politicker. Bebito and Kilroy immediately started politicking. And it ultimately led to their demise in the organization. But that's what we're talking about here.
We're using it to, target adversaries in the organization. And it wasn't really functioning in the sense that a real commission functions as like ombudsman and communication facilitators. I mean, it wasn't working in that respect. It was highly politicized. It was a grab for power by Kilroy and Bebito. And I started really experiencing the politics at that point in time. And I realized, even back then, that this was not going to last for me. Because it wasn't the brotherhood that I thought it was. I mean, there were friends, and at that point in time, we had real friendships with Mexican Mafia members. There were friends that were loyal. But you seen the deceit and the deception as well. It was always there.
When did that first hit you?
On Folsom Mainline, when I seen all those members turn on me, and other individuals that were my friends. They isolated us as a group, and we couldn't, we
The Kilroy people did.
The Kilroy people, yeah. We ended up turning the tables on them, and they were hit eventually.
Yeah, that's a shocker, huh? Early on, I knew I wasn't going to be a Cardenal for the rest of my life. I knew it, I saw the petty dislikes, and because I was Shai's homeboy, Bebito and them politicked on me and Kilroy. At first, Kilroy was cool, but then as soon as he hooked up with Bebito, he became a dick, like a straight dick, and I despised him. And when I heard they were on the lista, I'll tell you the story in one of his upcoming videos. I'm sure it's going to be addressed here. If not, I'll tell you about it, about how the tables turned. We start talking about that right now, and I think that's a good cutoff point. That's a good cutoff point for us because we're about 30 minutes in, and you guys are getting way, way too spoiled with all this long content. But I'm trying to satisfy all the truckers, the workers, the stay-at-home moms that are there taking care of the babies, cooking food, cleaning the house. Yeah, I'm trying to take care of all you folks by giving you long-form content that you can listen to while you're doing your thing. All right, folks. With that said, that'll wrap up this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe. Peace out.
This is Rene Enriquez. Nickname Boots.